up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with On the Might of Princess. It's so great to talk to all of you today. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Going on?
Oh, not much, not much. It's a good time to be able to talk to you because you just recently celebrated the 20-year anniversary of where you are and where you want to be. I want you to all to take me back now to 1998 when you first started writing this. So, you're all a bunch of hardcore kids. I'm learning my ABCs in kindergarten. So just remind me, what was the idea of the making of this album when you first went into it? What did this album what was the goal of On the Might of Princess at that time?
We actually started writing that in '99 when Chris joined. That's kind of the beginning of the writing process. But that was, I guess we were just pretty much primarily a live band. So it was more about capturing the live energy at the time. That's what I remember. And it wasn't like we went in trying to make some polished record or anything like that. We wanted to capture the intensity of the live shows. We were very into playing live at that time. We were playing 2 or 3 times a week, and the songs were flowing very easily at the time, so it was it was just a very vibrant, positive time for the band, and that was definitely captured it.
Yeah, and like Tom said, well, let me start by saying this too. There's 3 of us here, but Jason passed away, who was our singer / guitar player, and he actually wrote a lot of those songs. And I just joined the band at that time. So what you're hearing is us basically getting together for the first time. I think some of that stuff Jason wrote on his own. Some of it was written before me. Some of it was written together. So it's a collection of stuff. But us playing together and putting that together is basically very new at the time of us sort of and the chemistry right off the bat was amazing. So really captured I think a lot of magic. I know it sounds cheesy, but for us, it was the most. It was the best time for us as a band because we were just clicking and everything was just flowing the way that it should. So that's kind of what I romanticize about that whole time period in that record, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a drummer before Chris. So when Chris joined, Chris was. It was like a new band. It didn't feel like this. We were already around for a while before that. The seed of the band started with Jason and I in '96. So by that time we already had some chemistry. But when Chris joined, it was just everything about the band felt very new. Just that one. It's funny how you could remove one person and add another, and it just adds a totally different energy. Even just to hanging out, just based on humor and based on just conversations, it became a very condensed thing that felt like a brand new it just felt like a new band, like Chris was saying. Even the songs we played before with the old drummer that we played with Chris took on a different energy. So they could definitely capture that new feeling of a new beginning kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the album as a whole was more of a musical diary or a documentation of that time period, as opposed to there being some sort of goal that we were trying to achieve. It was just kind of scrambling to get down your thoughts on a piece of paper almost. There were so many ideas at that time because the whole situation was new for all of us. So we basically just got together and just let the ideas flow and the creativity flow, and it was like a stream of consciousness almost, where whatever you came up with just went down, and then you honed it later on, and hoped it worked into some kind of cohesive whole at the end, and which I think it did. I think it's eclectic. And there's a lot of different styles on that record, and there's everything from acoustic to metal on there, and but it all sounds like us. It doesn't sound like a band trying to do this and trying to do that. It just sounds like a bunch of musicians who were pretty versatile getting together and writing music in the style of all the various eclectic styles that we listen to.
Yeah, I kind of I listened to this album and I feel like it's such a good representation on the time period and where you all are from at that time as well. Think about
Right.
what albums were to come out around this time. You had Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Silence coming out. You had, a Relationship of Command about to come out. So it's fair to say that On the Might of Princess was a band that was very much affiliated in sort of the Long Island hardcore, post-hardcore scene, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think energy-wise, yeah, because like even though I think we kind of had a more of a hodgepodge of all the stuff we were listening to, and obviously being influenced by some of the stuff around us, it definitely had the took on that, had to take on that energy. We just kind of absorbed it all, but the fact that we were pulling from so many different places kind of gave it our own kind of vibe, I think.
Yeah, and I think also, well, for the place that we were from was incredibly saturated with hardcore, and so, you know, if you go to like the trace the history of all of us, like, you know, not to speak for all of you guys, but like, you know, for example, like Tommy and Lou came up with a lot of hardcore guys, and they were playing in a band that kind of sounded like Helmet, right? And so me and Jason were both really into Bad Brains, and personally, I was extremely into like, you know, Sick of It All and stuff like that. But I think the aggressiveness from that scene that kind of brought us together probably was like a band like Quicksand or a band like Helmet, if we're gonna like kind of try to tie it all together into like something we all agreed on that we were into. That's definitely like the kind of heavy stuff that, you know, that we all shared, I guess.
Yeah, I would say listening to the album, like the heaviest song I would say is the song that it opened up with, The Water versus the Anchor. I mean, you open up with that. I mean, that's just an all-out, like, I just want to say an all-out thrasher in a way. And then, like, you know, you have songs that are like so like I would say like mesmerizing, like the acoustic intro to Illusion to Italy is just so atmospheric, and then you have a song like For Meg that like kind of like brings in like dialogue. So is it fair to say that maybe at the time, and I kind of like mean it as a compliment, but it almost seemed like you were all taking inspiration from many different sources for this, right?
Taking what? I'm sorry.
You were all taking like inspiration from many different sources, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that was the main part of the band. That's, you know, that's one thing we all definitely all agreed on, that we were gonna not like limit ourselves to one thing, especially in Long Island in general. When people say a Long Island scene, it's such a, even that in itself so wide. Especially at the time, it was like a lot of pop punk and just different types of hardcore, ska even. There was like so much stuff going on, so it's hard to like label it as one thing. Whereas us, we listened to so many things together and individually pulling from different sources. So yeah, it had to all just like seep in. I think the one, you know, finding thing was just I think the live energy, like I said before, that's the thing that sticks out to me when I listen to it. Because if someone listened to that and then went to see us, it's kind of the same thing. You kind of knew what you were gonna get from it. But
yeah, and we had like a lot of conversations about different bands too. Like, you know, we would be talking about, you know, Red House Painters, which is like an acoustic band, or a band like Cursive, which was kind of like an indie rock band, and then, you know, we might have a conversation about Godflesh or something like that, and those were all played in the van when we went on tour. So like, we were just into a lot of different stuff. I mean, I think that was a time of experimentation too, because in the 90s and then into the early 2000s, you're coming out of like stuff that's more traditional, right? Early on in that time period. And then people are starting to like figure out how to blend stuff. Some people did it good and some people did it really badly. You know, and I think that's just what we were doing without necessarily talking about it. You know what I mean? It didn't seem weird to do something like that at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, like, when it came to, like, do you almost consider, like, would you have considered this album, like, I know maybe this would have been a question for your singer, may he rest in peace, but, like, do you almost feel like that this album had kind of, like, a underlying concept behind it? Because I feel like there is something that, maybe it's both in the lyrics or in the music itself, because even though the music does go in multiple directions, it does seem like that there was always stuff that tied it together. So would you say that with the making of this album, there was maybe kind of like a concept that maybe your vocalist sort of like had in mind in a way?
Yeah, I think I don't want to speak for him or anyone else, but I think at the time there was not so much, you know, we were all kind of going through our own individual struggles, but at the same time finding a lot of like solace in the band. I can't say the same for the later periods of the band or even prior to that, but at that moment we kind of figured out how to, you know, channel all that stuff we were going through into the band as a as a unit. So there's definitely like a lot of, there's some issues here and there, but for the most part, it was a very cathartic time, I guess, to be playing shows and writing and stuff. So I think the over like the concept of, I guess, unity and within the band, that's probably the main thing. And also filtering out those struggles, like I was saying. And there's a lot of like early 20s, like that kind of disillusionment that comes along with that, and like going from youth to adulthood, that those like push and pulls in different directions, that's all there. Some substance stuff, some there's not one underlying like concept of struggle, just like just the mix of all the stuff we're gonna go through, I guess.
Yeah. And I've always admired the guitar work that was on here as well. Like I love the rhythm section. I love the vocals. I want to know now with like really the guitar work on here. So Lou, with you and Jason working together with this guitar tone, having acoustic elements, having super like power chord driven elements, having very clean guitar tones, thriving on distortion. Were you and like Jason just having like the ultimate like guitar smorgasbord? Were you just like going? You kind of just let your heart and instinct take over with writing it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we just kind of, we both had a similar approach, I would say, but it's sort of a it's hard to put a finger on it necessarily, but we both loved all different kinds of music. So whether we were writing like an acoustic track or something heavier, we would just play off each other. Like if he wrote a part, I would, neither of us were necessarily stepping on each other's toes. Like I would if he wrote a simple part, I would try to do something a little more complex to weave in and out of it without taking away from the whatever aspect it was that made that part what it was. You never want to try to play over someone. You want to try to work with them. So like, a lot of our guitar interplay is sort of each guitar part we use in and out of the other one, and it almost you can't tell which track is which on a lot of the songs. And it's funny because we would see people do covers of our songs, and watching what the guitar players would do was always interesting to me, being as like I know it's very hard to differentiate because the two guitar parts are so intertwined that usually they would wind up coming up with a blend of the two, or mixing up the two parts as one, and that I would even find interesting because I almost like to watch that to see what somebody else heard from what we were actually doing, because what comes across is a third option almost. You have the one guy doing one thing, the other guy doing the other thing, and then when you listen to it together, it's something completely different, but still those elements need to be there to work together. But as it has one cohesive sound, even if the parts are kind of working against each other almost in some spots.
Yeah, I feel like you could take these songs apart and like isolate all the different elements and they would still like be just as good, but then you like put them together and it makes something great. I kind of wanted to also talk about, because your style, like I could show this album to My Chemical Romance fans and they would love it. They would love it.
Right.
But I feel like I could show this album to Dillinger Escape Plan fans and they would also appreciate it. So like it's fair to say that like I think that On the Might of Princes was definitely a band that with your sound you were able to play to multiple audiences, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it works in reverse too. Like, while I think those bands might appreciate us, we as a collective of four guys probably appreciate those bands and all the bands that are like them as well. Because like Chris said before, we were listening to everything from Red House Painters, Cursive, Converge. People listening to. We were listening to every Quicksand, Tool, Helmet. You name it, classic rock. I'm been big in flamenco music, just totally every style you can think of, which is, flamenco is like the Spanish classical, gypsy style music. So we have influences from every corner, from world music to metal to, classic rock and, the stuff that was in the local scene at the time as well,
Yeah.
And also just to kind of, Alex, we I've talked to you about this off camera, but we played with everybody. We played with Fall Out Boy, and we played with From Autumn to Ashes, and we played with Taking Back Sunday and Thursday and Brand New and Coheed and Cambria. So we were playing with it, and we were playing with fucking. We played a show with the Misfits once, So we literally just played with like almost every kind of band back then, ska bands even.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
We would actually get thrown on ska shows almost all the time.
Yeah. The beginning, I mean, there was that's the time there was like nothing else. We just said yes to any show, and like we became friendly with a lot of those people anyway. So there was one show in particular, I think that Cancer Sucks show. I think everyone was pop punk but us. It was like everyone was like a kind of Weezer band, and we got on. I was like, but somehow it made sense because everyone was like so friendly. There was such a communal vibe to a lot of those pocket scenes in Long Island. So like, it's not so much that we were influenced by them, but just that we always we were like yes band. Like if someone else to play, we just say yes before we even knew like what kind of show it was. We just loved playing it live at the time. So.
Which is awesome. That's always good. And I feel the enthusiasm on this music as well. And I kind of wanted to ask, like, I didn't want to focus too much on this because we were focusing maybe mainly on the 20-year anniversary of where you are and where you want to be. But like, but you also released Sirens after this. So did maybe the making of that album, did the making of this album influence that as well when you put out Sirens? Did you kind of almost feel like that you found your sound with this in a way?
Can I do that for a second?
What?
I don't understand what was the question?
What were you saying, Chris?
Oh no, Alex, I think you were saying did the making of Where You Are influence us finding ourselves more on Sirens?
Yeah, exactly.
And I wanted to take that. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I'm going to say probably not, just because even though that sounds like it would make sense in theory, we went through a lot of weird shit in between those two albums that by the time we made that record, we were like a mess. Like, we're still friends, obviously, but like there was a lot of like strange things that were very different in our personalities and our personal relationships with each other, and then like in the scene, and then ultimately like what became an industry totally made that record weird to make. A lot of people love that record, but I know that we've talked about it. I could listen to it now and I like it, but it was like an unfinished record in a weird way.
It was an opportunity to do that. Everything you mentioned, it was definitely like the right opportunity to do that. It was just the wrong timing as far as like where our heads were at. Like, the sound of it, we listened back, was definitely what Chris said. Is unfinished is always the word that comes to mind when I hear it. So I had all these like kind of missing pieces that could have been there to make it like that kind of record that you were talking about, like some kind of like finding our sound. Well, the thing we wanted to do was finally make a studio record with like different layers and different things and stuff. But it just didn't. I don't know. I don't think it succeeded as we didn't reach the potential. Could have, especially coming off where you are.
Tom. I mean, it's funny because I never really thought of that record feeling unfinished, but it felt rushed to me. Like, it felt like because from the inside with the band, we saw us starting to fall apart as a tight knit unit, and we had a lot of the material, and then all of a sudden, it felt like we were clamoring to finish it because it was falling apart. So like we sort of had to just add like, oh, we need one more song, let's just write another song, and that we got to the studio. Jay actually didn't have a lot of the lyrics finished, and that put a lot of stress on him and everyone, but especially him, to try to like wrap that up while we were in the recording process. So I think I think for him, his creativity at that point was he wasn't focused as much. I mean, I wrote a lot more of Sirens than I did of the Where You Are record, just to by default even. But yeah, I mean, it was the kind of thing where I think we all know that record, while I still love that record, it could have been more had we had our act together.
Yeah,
I think not reach potential is probably a better way to say it. Unfinished. It was just like, coming off especially that high of the Where You Are stuff, like knowing that we could have made something better and like not as rushed. Like I feel like the fact that there were labels involved at that point and like a pressure to get a deadline, but also and at the same time, not being up to that game because Jason being obviously a huge part of the band was not taking his focus was so great in where you are, but when that happened, he was just not it's just not there as far as creative.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a record where we were trying to move forward, but we were kind of dragging this like weight around with us.
Yeah.
So it's just like the momentum of that record just kind of got sucked away because it just felt like this enormous weight of just personal garbage, just holding us down a little bit. And I mean, but I'm super psyched on the way the album came out regardless. I mean, even despite all that, it still holds up when I listen to it now. I don't cringe or anything when I'm listening to it, but it's where sometimes a lot of times you look back on a record you do 20 years ago or 30, whatever it is, and you're like, ooh, but that record still, I think, has a thing about it. It might not be this. It's a totally different thing than where you are at, but I still.
Well, if anything,
love the record,
like the heart of where you are is felt, but also with Sirens, I think the Dark Cloud, you could feel that too. Right. So that if anything, it is a good reflection of that too, in a sense. But
yeah. I mean, it has its own shtick, I guess. That whole like we're falling apart vibe,
right.
Which I think does come through a little bit in the music.
I think so. Just the overall vibe. Just there's some kind of there could be just the nostalgia part on my end, but like when I hear I don't listen to it often. When I do pop it in, it's like you definitely have that like that sinking feeling of like, oh god, this is you can just feel it.
Right. Yeah. And like 15, 20 years does help you have a little bit more of an objective view when you look back and listen to your own stuff, like because you're not so in it emotionally and physically and whatever else. It's sort of like this. It's like looking at a picture, of you back in the day, except it happens to be, a musical picture,
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that, I'm sorry, I know we just took forever to answer that, is that
it's all good.
We were also, that's when like it became like a business around us, and it wasn't a business at all when we made Where You Are. There were no like, fancy publicists or booking agents or labels or expectations. We were just kids in my parents' basement, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or Lou's parents' basement was usually so just got very different at that point.
On a bit of like a brighter note though, to the more like the happier days of On the Might of Prince, it's like when you take me back to a show with you guys. So you're playing these shows now in the early 2000s. My ass is sitting in second grade learning how to read, so I had to miss.
Should have came, man.
I should have. Believe me, I much rather would have been there than learning division. Trust me. But take me back to like a show now. Let's say you were playing Where You Are and Where You Want to Be in full. Everybody's killing each other with The Water versus the Anchor, but then like everybody. I could see people waving torches in the air singing "You'll Always Have a Friend in Me" or "Don't You Hate It When It Turns Out You're the Asshole." Like I just want to know, like, what was an audience at a show for On the Might of Prince like? Was it like insane? Like
there was no like differentiation. Yeah, there was always like the audience was like standing on my amp. It was like there was never like a boundary. That's part of what I loved about it. I really all of us felt kind of the same way. It was kind of like a party for everyone in the room, not just us. They'd be stepping on our pedals and knocking cables over. It was a very like our house is your house kind of thing, and that's what made it really fun too.
Yeah. The crowd and the band were seamless, pretty much. Like there was the crowd and the band, but they were interbled. There was the audience was up on the mic. They were all over us. When we were down low. We rarely played on stage. And if we did, it didn't matter because people would just crash it. But, we loved playing on the floor, just right up in everybody right in your face. That's where the energy interplay comes from, and that's why the live show I felt was so strong because, you have that feedback from the people and they're right there, And I mean, I've never seen anything like what happened when we played For Meg and there'd be that sing-along part, the You'll Always Have a Friend in Me part. You're looking at like some of the hardest dudes you've ever seen, like, just tough guys and then like, little skinny, like, emo kids and everybody. And they're all just huddled around arm in arm, singing along, hugging each other, shouting into the mic, crying. Like, it was just like, it was like so surreal, you know. I mean, and I never took it for granted because it was so like beautiful to see that, and so like humbling, but yet inspiring, you know, even while in the moment, you know, like you would be playing and you'd be inspired by what you were looking at with the crowd that was inspired by you, and it was like this feedback loop that just would build, you know.
Yeah.
It was you know, some of the greatest times of my life.
I'm just letting you know, I can't watch any of the Toy Story movies anymore after hearing 4 Meg because I think you outdid Randy Newman on his song.
That's so funny. You know, it's funny, Alex. I know that we're doing this in front of an audience, and maybe they'll find it interesting too. But like 5 minutes before we did this, a friend of mine, Hugo, who plays in the band Killy Rivals, posted a photo of us playing during that time, and it shows the crowd. And in the crowd shot, you see Veronica, who's in Life of Agony now, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And Bill Meese, who is now Ace Frehley's publicist, and like a bunch of other people, and it's just like, whoa, it's crazy. But it was, well, yeah. Anyway, Lou summed it up really well because we brought people together, and people still tell us that and talk about that because, especially that particular song, like we closed with it all the time, but it was a mixture of the fact that we welcomed the audience in a way. I mean, hardcore bands did that too, but with us, we had a different vibe where, like, yeah, you could sing along and people would mosh and go nuts, but there was like a vulnerability to the lyrics, I think, and to the music that wasn't the same as if you were like moshing at a Hatebreed show or something.
Yeah, and I think to back that up too, it was kind of like, people did what they would do for like a local hardcore band, you know, to us, but we were a style of music that, like, more times than not, there would be a lot more pretentiousness involved with, like, you know, like a band that played like emo or whatever, like usually wasn't, they usually had some kind of air of, you know, being famous or being like, I don't know, you know, just a pretension to them where they weren't approachable. Whereas, you know, we're just a bunch of regular guys, and whatever our music was, we played in a scene where people were used to doing that, and we were totally down for it. Whereas I feel like, you know, sometimes, you know, a more like indie band would come through and it would be like totally out of place to do anything like what they were doing with us.
Yeah, no, the emo guys back then, what it was turning into, like, they were kind of like rock stars before they were rock stars. So like they were guys walking around with sunglasses indoors, with the scarf on indoors, and, you know, the hot girlfriend. It was almost like, you know, what glam metal was in the 80s is what the emo bands were turning into at that time. We weren't like that.
Yeah.
We played with bands.
Bands doing it for the hype, not for the music. You know, like, you know, it was like being part of the scene rather than, you know, letting the scene be part of the band. You know, like,
yeah. And going to so many shows as a kid and like teenager, like, it's very rarely you felt like you could be yourself at a show. Like, for now, when I go, I do like to blend into the crowd and kind of be invisible. But when you're a kid and you want to let loose, but like you don't feel like you're cool enough or strong enough. Like, if you're at a hardcore show, like seeing Sick of It All, you're not gonna try to grab the mic. You will get killed. Like, being my size anyway. And then at like you know, any other show, like you kind of I don't know. We wanted to make it very comfortable for everybody, not just the cool people, not just the tough guys, not just the, you know, the goth girls. It was like a very we'll just gonna accept anyone that's there and make everyone feel comfortable and make them feel a part of it. And that's, you know, that's always what I kind of wanted to go. You know, there's only been a handful of shows. I always reference seeing Fishbone for the first time. It had that vibe of like communal. You didn't have to be a certain way, look a certain way to like enjoy it, and get wild and feel safe too. That's another thing too. Like, I always look back at their shows. There were never any fights, and as wild as the pit got, it was never a thing where I looked like anyone was gonna get hurt and people looking out for each other and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, I would go see, you know, Lou and I, we all grew up in the park. I would go see VOD or something like that, and like, it was dangerous. You know what I'm saying? It was always like either a fuck or someone get hit in the head. And we never, you know, like, we never had shows like that. So it was a release of energy, but without having that feel like you get a nose broken or something.
Yeah, and I think the crowd always felt like they could get a little bit aggressive or they could get a little bit vulnerable, and sometimes within the same few seconds of the same song, because you would watch everybody hugging, holding hands, basically huddling together, singing along, and then when that drums drop and then everything hits for that heavy part, people would just lose their minds and go crazy and just mosh, rush stage, whatever. Just, but there was never any ill intent towards anyone. It wasn't like, I want to fuck people up. No, it was like people just letting their emotion out, and it was a release for everybody.
Yeah.
And they saw without meeting us, they saw how we were. It wasn't like if you go see a show, like not to talk bad about anyone, if you see like four big guys with like tattoos and they're like, they're doing chugging music. There's a energy that feeds off that. But they came to see it. We were just geeks, and they saw that we were not gonna. They saw that we were approachable and saw that we were gonna be, keep them safe. It was a thing. There was never a fight, like I said before. But if there was, we would have called them out. We would have called the people out. I think Fugazi is probably a similar vibe that we had. I guess as far as a hardcore show, it's still. Skinny guy friendly. You know what I mean?
Skinny guy friendly. That should be a genre.
That could be a new, exactly.
Yeah. The final question I wanted to ask you is, if you don't mind, it's kind of like two questions in one, but obviously with the 20-year anniversary of this album, I feel like that this is something that we should celebrate. I sadly missed the reunion show at Vitus, but I couldn't even get into that show yet. I wasn't 21. But, could you maybe see, just to celebrate this, when we could all be together again for music, can you maybe see you all getting together to celebrate this, whether it is jamming with a friend, on vocals, or maybe like some sort of maybe reunion jam session? And for maybe people who haven't gotten the privilege to ever see On the Might of Princess, you kind of just made me wish I had my own Bill and Ted moment, I could go back in time and see your show. But maybe for people who haven't had the privilege of meeting somebody like Jason, maybe you could tell what are some cool memories with him and everything.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying this, and I don't mean to be pretentious, but I can't really answer that. We can't really answer that question just because we have talked about it, but we haven't made a decision on that. Mm-hmm. But really, I'll answer that in two parts, though. I am actually really flattered and humbled by the fact that I have met so many people in their 20s that I meet a lot of people I didn't know that I was in On the Might of Princes. Last year I went on tour with a band from Texas, and they were your age, and they had no idea. And when they found out, they told me they had never seen the band as well. People through my day job, also in their 20s, who have said the same thing. So I think it's a cool idea, and I've seen people do it, and we've talked about it, but we haven't really decided how we feel about that. Jason is a very hard person. So, if we did that, it would be a celebration for sure, but it would be very hard to replicate the kind of intensity that Jason gave when he performed. Through his ups and downs, the one constant thing about him as a performer, which I don't even think he would probably want to use the word performer. He was just such a, no pun intended, because of the lyric I'm about to quote, but he really wore his heart on his sleeve. And it sounds funny to say this now, but you would watch him play. I take it from me because I watched the band before I was in it, but he was, he performed like it was the last time that he was gonna ever get to do that every single time. And when I first joined the band, he performed like that at rehearsal. So, I'm glad there's videos out there, and I'm trying to work on a documentary to sort of even show footage of other stuff from back then. But it's something that I think we want to talk about more. But it's a tough thing. But I do to wrap that up. Yeah, Jason was a very unique person, and when I joined the band, one memory I like to share is that before we started jamming, he made me a mixtape that I still have, and it had a lot of different styles of music, from Opeth to some acoustic music and some screamo music. So he was just very interesting in terms of like where he was coming from, and it was all very real. So that's kind of like how I would like to sort of honor him as we're talking about this album. But yeah, I'll let the other guys kind of chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it would be a celebration. Not necessarily trying to, replace anybody or anything like that. If it's something we all agreed on, it would be a thing that would be more like a party or a chance to, like I said, to celebrate that time and honor the time and honor him. But taking the pressure off of being like, oh, we have to replace it. If it would be one thing, it was during the time and we were trying to keep the band going, and it was a year after he passed away. But this is like years later. It would be more a tribute, right, than anything. So I feel like that pressure wouldn't have to be there. But it's I've seen that stuff done well, and I've seen it done not well, and you want to make sure it's doing it justice too. So it's a thing where we have to still kind of wrap our heads around. But I never say never.
Yeah, I mean, even if we're not able to do a show, or which may or may not be able to happen, but I feel like it's almost more important that the music's still out there, because I feel like everybody knows what it's like to get that record that like from your big brother or like from a friend or a cousin or just somebody you meet along the line, gives you, like Chris said, gives you a mixtape, like to get that. To be for the chance for our record to be that for somebody, I think is the most important thing. Because everyone's had that record that's totally inspired them or changed their life or however you want to put it. Or was their impetus for you to start a band. To be that for somebody else, I think to be a record out there that somebody might get and be like, oh shit, I can't believe I've never heard of this band, or like, whoa, where did this, like, how did this exist? Because people are still discovering like cool bands from the 70s, that nobody ever realized were amazing. You pick up an old vinyl record from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it was like some underground, like rock band that was like better than half the ones that were huge, So that stuff is out there, and I think, being able to be a part of something that even affects one person that way is a privilege, and I think that's a testament to like what Jay and all of us really achieved with that record,
Yeah.
I just realized that a record from 1970 would actually be 50 years ago. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that it's out there. Even the way people digest music now, it's like that it's so available, and I'm just happy it's there, because you can find anything with a click of Spotify or wherever, and now it's like that it's there. We're just grateful that it's accessible and for people, because I still go on. I'm searches for new music all the time, and I still haven't lost that giddy search. I just always love finding new stuff. I'm on always, like, literally every night I'm just looking for new music to listen to, and the fact that it's there for reachable for anybody right now is amazing. So
yeah,
we're really grateful for Dead Broke to give us that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm still vintage. I get my music on iTunes, still like an old school guy. So
when you're saying vintage as in iTunes, that really sets some kind of perspective.
Right.
That's old school for you.
Yep, I remember.
I think there's no. I think the way it's out, that things are out now. I think it's incredible. I mean, it's one thing in the past. I don't really glorify the past of like having to go get a 7-inch and like you bring it home and it sucks. It's cool that everything is out there to find, and I don't know. I think it's the best time to be a musician, and the best time to be a music lover. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna just stick to topic, like just to promote the thing, but like Where You Are is available on streaming for the first time in 20 years. It's never been available until now, so that's kind of what brought us here in the first place.
Yeah, and
it's funny. Do people actually make playlist mixtapes now, or is that?
Yeah,
is that
absolutely, all the time. I do it all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's great.
I guess that's the equivalent now.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. You make playlists for each other now. That's how it's done.
Yeah, that's the modern
Cool.
way. But I'm still
Yeah.
old school, man. I'm still old school. Like I go on iTunes and like if there's one song I like, I hit the preview button, and if I like it, I give it a single song MP3 download. I'm old school that way, you know.
There you go. There you go.
You know.
That's you buying 7-inch for us, basically.
Yeah, I remember being a kid getting an iTunes gift card, and then I bought Avenged Sevenfold City of Evil, and I was immersed. Like, so that's my story of rock and roll.
Alex,
man.
I think we played at Hellfest with Avenged Sevenfold, by the way, a long time ago.
That's one hell of a tour, and
Yeah.
I wish.
And Matt Mastodon played too.
Wow.
And Jason was pumped, so was I. But anyway.
But thank you guys so much for coming together
Thank
to have
you.
this discussion.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, like it really means the world that I get to talk with a band that really was influential within the Long Island hardcore scene and really brought people together. It's definitely things people need to hear nowadays. And whatever happens in the future, I look forward to hearing it. And I'm really glad that where you are and where you want to be is out on streaming and for everybody to check out. So thank you guys so much. Everybody, we are here with On the Might of Princess, where you are and where you want to be. Be sure to check that out. It's available on streaming everywhere. Don't miss out on this record. It's absolutely kick-ass. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.